I was practicing my thank you face in the bathroom mirror when I realized the person who'd taught me how to win was about to teach me how to lose. For 3 months, I'd been sleeping with a legal pad on my nightstand. Ideas at 2 a.m., scribbles that looked like cardiogram lines in the morning. Our company, Harbor and Hearth Hospitality Group, was bidding on a chain of boutique hotels across the Pacific Northwest, and I'd led the strategy like it was the only thing keeping the city lights on. New packages for shoulder season. Dynamic pricing that didn't price out locals. Partnerships with indie coffee roasters because, yes, Seattle runs on caffeine and stubbornness. I'd been told, by words said out loud, not just hinted, that the director of strategy role would be mine if we landed the Whitfield account. "It's your playbook, Lena," Victor had said, palming my shoulder with that practiced paternal grip. "You close this, the title is a formality." So on the day Whitfield's signed contract hit our inboxes, I was in the 4th floor restroom practicing the kind of smile that reads, grateful, not gloating. A tiny rehearsal to keep the nerves down. My reflection looked like a person who knew what she'd earned. I passed Tessa on the way back. Lipstick perfect, hair in a glossy knot, a binder hugged to her chest like a school kid who studied. She'd joined my team a year ago and had the kind of soft-focused charm that makes executives chuckle at nothing. I liked her at first. I liked showing her the ropes. I shared templates, my notes, my hard-won shortcuts for how to get a CFO to nod along when he's already decided not to. She'd bring me matcha and say, "Teach me your witchcraft." I'd laugh and pretend it wasn't witchcraft. It was mileage. "Big day," she said now, eyes gleaming. "Big day," I echoed, and kept walking because something in her tone felt rehearsed. At 10 a.m., my calendar pinged. Victor, 15 min. I smoothed my blazer, tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, and stepped into his glass-walled office, where the lake looked like a sheet of hammered steel. Victor stood. "Lena." He smiled with all the upper teeth, corporate and careful. "Come in." I sat. He shut the door, and the soft click felt like punctuation. "We got it," he said. "I saw." I waited, palms flat on my knee to keep from fidgeting. "Now say it. Say the thing we both know you're about to say." He cleared his throat. Leadership's decided to structure the next chapter a little differently. The sentence sloshed around my brain without finding a place to land. Differently? How? "We're promoting Tessa to Director of Strategy." He said it quickly, like ripping off tape. "You'll continue to lead key accounts, of course. Your institutional knowledge is invaluable." My laugh came out like a cough. "You're joking?" He winced. "She has certain strengths. Client-facing charisma, and there's pressure to showcase emerging talent." "Emerging talent?" I repeated. I built the plan. I negotiated Whitfield's adjustment clause. I ran their Saturday night revenue model until my eyes were bleeding. I could hear my voice getting thin and too bright, like the way you talk when a waiter sets down the wrong order and you don't want to make it weird. "You told me." "I know what I said," he replied, too quickly. Then softer. "I need you to be a team player on this." A team player. The words tasted like pennies. I thought about the legal pad on my nightstand, about my parents who still worked doubles at the restaurant in Yakima, who told their friends their daughter was almost a director, Mija, any day now. I thought about Colin, my husband, who'd been practicing his poker face lately, and told me the promotion would be good timing if we ever wanted to try for a baby. Victor placed a glossy folder on the desk like it was an apology. Compensation adjustment. Numbers that were bigger than mine. Not mine. Tessa's. "Let's do cake at 2, he added, as if sugar could stucco over a crack that ran to the foundation. My mouth kept moving. "Right? Cake." I walked out on legs I didn't entirely feel. The floor looked off-level, like the building had settled while I was in that office. At my desk, someone had placed a tiny plant with a ribbon and a card. "For your new office soon. T." I stared at the smiley face until it blurred. At 2, there was cake in the kitchen and clapping that felt like white noise. Tessa blushed, gave a speech about standing on the shoulders of giants, glanced at me when she said giants, and I felt my ribcage cinch. Someone yelled for me to say a few words. I said I was proud. I said we win as a team. My throat burned like I'd swallowed steam. After, I hid in a phone booth and texted Priya. He gave it to her. "I think I'm going to throw up." She called immediately. You want me to beat him up or file his taxes wrong? I smiled at the glass. Both. Come over after your shift, she said. I'll make chai. We'll make a list of all the ways you're still that girl. I am still that girl, I said, but it sounded like a question. On the walk home, the February air cut through my coat. Seattle has a way of pretending it's not cold until the wind knifes around a corner and reminds you. I stopped for groceries. I picked up mushrooms because Colin makes this perfect butter and thyme thing when he's trying. When I walked in, he was on his laptop at the dining table, headset on, nodding at a Zoom square only he could see. He muted and looked up. Hey, babe. I set the paper bag down gently, like Louder would break something. They gave it to Tessa. His mouth shaped surprise. Wait, what? But Victor said. I know what Victor said. I started unloading. Mushrooms, eggs, the bread with the seeds he pretends not to love. Apparently, we're showcasing emerging talent. Colin leaned back, eyes scanning my face like there was a right answer somewhere on it. I'm sorry, wow, that's ridiculous. He stood and came around the table. He smelled like laundry detergent and the citrusy aftershave I bought him. He put his arms around me and I let go, just for a second, letting my forehead fall to his shoulder. Somewhere inside me a warning bell chimed. Quiet, easily ignored. Let's order Thai, he said into my hair. You shouldn't have to cook. I pulled back and looked at him, really looked. He was doing that thing where his eyes don't quite land on mine, an old sales habit, scanning, measuring. Sure, I said. Thai sounds good. We ate in front of an old movie, the kind I've seen a dozen times and like for the way the soundtrack holds your hand. Colin laughed in the right places. He refilled my water. He kissed the top of my head. When he went to brush his teeth, his phone lit up on the coffee table. A preview. Tessa, hey, quick thing for tomorrow. Can I call? I stared until the screen dimmed. My reflection on the black glass looked like a person practicing neutrality. I told myself it was work. It was probably work. People text about work all the time. People use first names in previews. People ask to call. I set the phone down like it had burned me and turned the volume up a notch. On screen, the hero made a speech about courage at the exact moment I could not locate mine. The next morning, I woke to a headache that felt like a hangover without the fun. The back of my eyes ached. It pulsed when I tied my shoes. At the office, every fluorescent bulb seemed calibrated to sharpen the edges of my failure. I sat down, opened my email, and found 3 immediate tasks assigned by Tessa. Bullet points with "Please advise" like a cherry on top. I typed, "I'm not your assistant," and deleted it. I typed, "Sure. Give me an hour," and hit send. Being useful had always been my survival skill. At 11, Victor pinged me. 12:30. Quick sync? I went. The conference room was glass and winter light. Tessa was already there, perched at the head of the table, new title gleaming on the org chart printout in front of her. Lena, she said brightly, can we walk through the Whitfield rollout? I want to make sure we're aligned on messaging. The word aligned did violence to my heartbeat. We're aligned, I said, sitting. We built it together. She nodded, like a teacher indulging a child. Right, of course. We reviewed timelines. She asked me to soften the language in the section about rate fences so it felt friendlier. I took a slow breath. The language is precise because it has to be. She tilted her head. You've always been very precise. Victor coughed a smile. We love that about Lena. I loved that about Lena, too, once. When the meeting ended, Tessa touched my elbow in the hallway. Hey, she said softly, I hope you know how much I admire you. The compliment landed like a tack. Thanks, I said. I mean it, she went on. You've taught me so much, and this promotion, it's not about you not being ready. It's just, sometimes leadership wants a fresh face. Your face is very fresh, I said, and even I wasn't sure if I meant it as a joke. That night, the headache didn't let up. Bright streaks skittered across my vision when I looked at my screen. Priya came over with a stethoscope thrown into her tote like a kitchen spoon. She pressed cool fingers to my wrist, counted, frowned. You've been grinding your teeth again, she said. Your jaw's a brick. I'll stop, I said. Uh-huh. She peered into my eyes with a tiny penlight. Any nausea? Numbness? Trouble finding words? I'm fine, I lied. It's just stress. It'll pass. She sat across from me and wrapped her hands around her mug. You don't look fine. I told her about Victor and Tessa and the way my ribs felt 3 sizes too small. I did not tell her about the text preview. I wasn't ready to become a person who said that out loud. File a complaint, she said. HR exists for this, theoretically. And say what? My boss lied to me in the traditional way. Say you were promised a role contingent on a win, you delivered, and they moved the goalposts. She paused. Do you have it in writing? I thought of all the we'll make it rights, the shoulder pats, the hallway promises that dissolve like cotton candy. No. She leaned back. Then you gather proof of something. The next morning, I woke with my headache shrunk to a dull stone. Colin had left early. A sticky note on the coffee maker read lunch? 1, followed by a heart that looked rushed. I was halfway to texting yes when a new email slid into my inbox from hr@harborhearth.com. Compensation alignment discussion. Alignment. Again. The company's favorite yoga pose. I went to HR at noon. The room was beige in the way that feels intentional, like the absence of color will make people less likely to yell. We're thrilled about the Whitfield acquisition, the HR manager chirped. And as we transition leadership, we want to ensure we're recognizing key contributors. She slid me a document. A $6,500 one-time bonus, taxed to the bone, with language that made it sound like a pat on the head. I stared at the number. It was both not nothing and insultingly not the thing. Is there anything else? I asked, keeping my voice in the safe range. Title review? Expanded scope? She pursed her lips like we were discussing weather. We'll revisit in Q4. It was February. Outside the HR office, I stood in a corridor with floor-to-ceiling windows and watched a ferry slice the water in two. On the glass, my reflection looked slightly out of register, like a print that's been misaligned. My phone buzzed. Colin. Running long. Rain check? Then, a second later, Tessa. Can you jump on at 1:30? Need your brain. I typed sure to one of them. Guess which? At 1:27, I ducked into a phone booth. My headache pulsed again, bright and cruel. The world narrowed. For a second, the edges of the room feathered black. I stood there, palms on the little desk, breathing like I'd forgotten how. The booth's glass felt cool against my forehead. The cool was the only good thing. The episode passed in 30 seconds, maybe less. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I'd eaten too little and caffeinated too much. I told myself a lot of things. By 5:45, I couldn't fake it anymore. I told Victor I had a migraine and left my laptop on my desk like a protest flag. The sky was the color of cold steel. I walked home slow, like the city might unspool if I hurried. Colin wasn't home. A meeting, then drinks. The note had become a calendar entry with a location downtown. I nuked leftover curry and ate it standing up in my socks, staring at the magnet photo of me and Colin from our trip to Port Townsend last summer. My hair was salty from the wind. His hand was on my shoulder. We both looked like people without question marks. At 8:22, my phone buzzed again. Priya, check your email. I got you a cancellation at Swedish Tomorrow. Neuro. 9:10 a.m. Don't argue. I started to type I'm fine, then deleted it. Okay, felt like a confession. I showered and let the hot water try to pound the headache out. In bed, I waited for Colin's key in the lock. At 11:18, it finally came. He walked into the dark like a person practicing quiet. He slipped under the covers smelling like limes and something floral that wasn't our laundry detergent. Hey, he whispered. Hey. I turned toward him, and he kissed me like someone saying sorry, without a language for it. I wanted to ask who were you with, and did she call, and do you think I'm stupid? Instead, I asked, will you drive me to a doctor tomorrow? His body tensed. Are you okay? Just headaches. Priya set it up. Of course, he said quickly. Yeah, of course. The next morning, the neurologist's waiting room had a plant that had seen too much and a TV playing a loop of ocean footage meant to be soothing. A receptionist called Morales, and I followed her to a room where the paper on the exam table crackled like a secret. The doctor listened. He tested reflexes. He asked me to track his finger with my eyes. He asked about stress. I laughed and then apologized for laughing. Given the visual disturbance, he said gently, I'd like to order an MRI, just to rule things out. Rule what out? I asked, voice even, heart crawling up my throat. Atypical migraine, small vascular changes, demyelination, mass. He said mass like it was a butterfly we might or might not see. Colin squeezed my hand. His palm was damp. The imaging suite smelled like warm plastic and disinfectant. The tech was kind in the bright, efficient way of people who shepherd anxious humans through loud tubes all day. I removed my earrings, tucked my hair in a cap, and slid onto the narrow bed. "It's noisy," the tech said. "We'll give you earplugs. You'll do great." "You'll do great." The same line Victor used before big pitches. Funny what words do. The magnet clanged to life. Mechanical whale song. I closed my eyes and counted my breaths. I pictured the Whitfield Hotel's lobby plant wall. I pictured my mother's hands rolling tortillas, the soft thud of dough on wood. I pictured Tessa's binder. I pictured Colin's phone lighting up at night. I pictured nothing. I tried to picture nothing, because nothing felt safest. After, the tech said the doctor would call once the radiologist read the images. "It can take a day," she warned. Sometimes two. That afternoon, I sat at my desk pretending to be a person who knew where the ground was. Tessa hovered with a question about page 6. I answered because answering is my drug. At 3:12, my phone rang with a 2806 number I didn't recognize, and suddenly everything I was became ears. "Hi, Miss Morales," the neurologist said, voice calibrated to reassure. "We did see something that we need to talk about." My mouth went dry. Okay. There's a meningioma, a small, likely benign tumor along the left frontal convexity. It's about 2.1 centimeters. That location could explain your headaches and visual aura. We'll need to monitor it closely. I'm referring you to neurosurgery to discuss options. Sometimes we watch, sometimes we operate. The good news is these are often slow-growing. Words enter your life and rearrange furniture. Meningioma, benign, neurosurgery. We watch, we operate. My desk plant looked suddenly too green, too alive. Tessa was still talking. I realized I could see her mouth moving through the glass, but couldn't hear her, like a TV on mute. "Do I have cancer?" I asked, because the child in me wanted the binary. "Most meningiomas are not malignant," he said. "We'll get you in quickly." After the call, I stared at my reflection in my blank monitor. I looked like a person who had thought her crisis was a stolen promotion and had just been introduced to a bigger word. I packed my bag without the performative clatter. On my way out, Victor spotted me. "Everything good?" he asked, as if everything were a stapler. "Fine," I said, because it is illegal in some states to tell the truth at work. Outside, the sky was one flat sheet of pewter. I walked home because I needed to feel the ground under me, and I was afraid to sit still. Colin was already there, which never happened. He'd set 2 mugs on the counter, steam ghosting up like something unfinished. When he saw my face, he straightened. "What did they say?" I said the words carefully, like handling glass. "They found a small tumor. They think it's benign. I'm seeing a neurosurgeon." He took a breath like he'd been dunked in cold water. Okay. We'll handle this." I nodded. My throat felt raw. I sat. He came around and knelt, hands on my knees like I might float away. "You're not alone," he said. "I'm right here." Later, when he stepped into the hallway to take a work call, his voice dropped into a tone I recognized but didn't like. "Yeah," he said softly. "Tonight's not good. No. Tomorrow." My stomach clenched. The tumor was a new room in my house, but the house hadn't changed its creaks. That night, sleep came like a series of shallow puddles. At 2:07 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Priya. "Call me the second you wake up. I'm here." A second later, a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're feeling better. T." It could have been kind. It felt like a fingerprint on a pane of glass. In the morning, I sat on the edge of the tub and stared at the grout line where the tile meets the floor. I thought about how life shifts on words and choices, and the dumb luck of where a handful of cells decide to be enthusiastic. Here is what I knew. I'd been promised a future and handed a smaller one. I was married to a man who was present in all the correct ways and absent in one glaring, fluorescent way. There was a small, likely benign something living in my head. I could not fight all 3 wars at once. On my way to work, I stopped at a bakery and bought the good croissants, the ones with the laminated layers you can hear. I placed one on Priya's doorstep with a note that said, "For later, thank you for being a person I believe." I kept the other in my tote because rituals matter. At my desk, I opened a blank document and titled it, "What I Can Control." Under it, I wrote 3 bullet points. Get copies of everything. Emails, docs, edits. Create a record. See the surgeon. Ask real questions. Make a plan I can live with. Watch, not just the tumor. I was still staring at the list when an email from Tessa popped up with the subject, "Congrats again." The body read, "Victor loved our pitch to Whitfield's board. Couldn't have done it without you. Drinks tonight? On me." I hovered over delete and chose archive instead. Records are records. At 4:40 p.m., Victor pinged me to remind me of the 6 p.m. Whitfield kickoff. "You'll be there, right?" I typed yes and stared out at the sky, which had micro-cracked into pink. I could feel the story of my life trying to pull me in a direction I didn't want to go, toward one big, loud confrontation that would satisfy every petty god for 5 minutes and leave me with ash. My body wanted it. My better self asked for something smarter. At 5:58, I stood at the back of the conference room while Tessa clicked through slides, voice liquid, hair perfect. When she landed a joke, the room laughed on cue. When she glanced at me, I smiled with my whole face because the truth is, I had built this. The room just didn't know it. Afterward, as people milled and clinked, Tessa drifted over. "Hey," she said, sincere enough to win an award. "How are you doing? Really?" I looked at her. For the first time since the promotion, I looked without flinching. "I'm making a list," I said. She blinked. "A list? Of things I can control," I replied, and took a sip of sparkling water like a person who could be trusted with bubbles. She squeezed my forearm. "You're a rock star." "I'm a person," I said, because I've grown suspicious of metaphors that turn us into objects. That night, I sat at our dining table with my laptop open and my What I Can Control file up. Colin said he had to step out for a quick thing. I nodded. He kissed my hair and left his phone on the table charging because he trusted me, or because he forgot, or because he wanted to be caught, or because he was just human in a sloppy human way. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I had my own list. Before bed, I brushed my teeth and looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked, the way you do after a haircut or a scare. I didn't recognize the expression and realized that was good. It meant the mask was off. I turned off the bathroom light and said out loud, to no one and to everything, "Okay." That was the night my life didn't fall apart. It tilted. And when things tilt, you learn which of your bones know how to balance. I don't think you ever realize how much of your life runs on autopilot until it's broken. The morning after my MRI results, I brushed my teeth, made coffee, checked emails, all the ordinary things, and every single one of them had a faint buzz around it, like background static. The tumor was the static. I'd told exactly 2 people about it so far, Colin and Priya. Priya asked questions, good ones. When's the neurosurgery consult? Do you have someone to go with you? What symptoms do we need to watch for? Colin, on the other hand, went straight to logistics. We'll check insurance. I'll move some stuff around at work. This isn't, the end of the world. Not the end of the world. I guess that was supposed to be comforting, but it just made me wonder what he thought the end of my world would look like. Work didn't slow down to match my brain's new schedule. Tessa had me in back-to-back meetings all week, most of them ones I used to run. There was no official announcement that I'd been demoted, of course. No corporate email saying, "Congrats to Tessa for taking Lena's job." Instead, the power shift happened in little ways. She started sending meeting invites without me. Clients I'd managed for years began calling her directly. The big picture work disappeared from my plate, replaced by supporting tasks and execution follow-up. I started keeping a quiet record, not a dramatic burn book, just emails, Slack messages, meeting notes, proof of the change, proof of my contribution, proof of anything. The first breadcrumb about Colin and Tessa didn't come from his phone or hers. It came from him. It was a Wednesday night. He was late, again. I'd made pasta, then let it go cold on the stove. At 9:30, I heard his key. Sorry, he said, kissing the top of my head. Work thing ran long. He dropped his bag by the door, and I noticed the smell before I noticed the rest. Perfume. Not my perfume. Floral, expensive, clinging to his blazer like static. I asked, "Who at your work smells like a Chanel counter exploded?" He laughed, too quickly. "Oh, probably that new AE. She overdoes it. You'd hate her." Maybe it was the tumor diagnosis, maybe it was the Tessa situation, maybe it was both, but something in me filed that moment under suspicious. 2 days later, we had the first Whitfield status call since the kickoff. I was logged in early, sipping coffee, when Tessa joined with her camera off. She didn't say hello, just started talking to someone in the room with her. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then I caught, "No, she doesn't know." "Not yet." A pause. "You're overthinking it. We'll figure it out." The call started before I could think about it too much. Still, my fingers hovered over the record button for a second longer than they should have. The neurosurgery consult was the following Monday. Colin said he couldn't come, big client meeting, so Priya took the morning off to sit in the waiting room with me. The surgeon was calm, confident, showed me the MRI images. The tumor looked like a small, pale coin pressed against the side of my brain. "Right now," he said, "your symptoms are manageable. We can watch it with periodic scans, or we can operate and remove it." "And operating means?" "A craniotomy," he said plainly. "Risks include infection, bleeding, seizures, and in rare cases, cognitive changes. But your location and size are favorable." It was like he was reading from a menu, only every option had a side of potential disaster. When we got home, Priya squeezed my arm. "Don't decide tonight. Rest." Colin came in a few hours later. "So?" he asked. I told him the basics, that I had a choice between living with it for now or doing something invasive with no guarantees. He nodded, distracted. "Right, well, you'll make the right call." Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, thumbed out a reply, and set it face down. I caught the preview before it dimmed. "Tessa, call me when you can." That night, I dreamed I was running through the Whitfield Hotel, but the halls kept looping back to the same door. On the other side, voices laughed, too muffled to recognize. I woke up with my jaw aching from being clenched all night. The next week, the sabotage stopped being subtle. One morning, I logged in to see Tessa had updated a client proposal I'd written, stripping out half the analysis, changing the pricing model in ways that didn't make sense. When I brought it up, she smiled like I'd just corrected her on the spelling of color. "Oh, I thought it needed simplifying. You can be very detail-oriented." Detail-oriented, the corporate way of saying fussy. I fixed the errors and saved my own copy in my records folder. The second breadcrumb about Colin and Tessa came from Priya, of all people. She'd gone out for drinks with a few coworkers, one of whom happened to be friends with a bartender downtown. The bartender had seen Colin there. With a younger woman, dark hair, sharp dress, lots of laughing. Priya didn't say Tessa's name. She didn't have to. By the end of the month, I had 3 things. A benign tumor that might still require brain surgery, a job I was being quietly pushed out of, a marriage I no longer trusted. One night, I opened my What I Can Control file and added a new line. Find proof. Decide what to do with it. That's when I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to confront them yet. I was going to watch. And when I acted, it would be on my terms. In a way, neither of them could spin. You know that moment when suspicion stops feeling like a hunch and starts feeling like gravity? That was me, on a Thursday night in March, sitting in the lobby of the Westview Hotel with a coffee I didn't even want. I was supposed to be at a client dinner across town, but the meeting ended early. My first instinct was to head home. My second, the one I didn't want to admit to, told me to take the long way, past a place Colin had mentioned once in an offhand comment. The Westview lobby was all warm wood and low lighting, the kind of place where people linger to feel expensive. And there, in the corner by the fireplace, was my husband, laughing, leaning in. A hand on the back of the booth that wasn't mine. "Tessa?" They didn't see me. I watched long enough to be sure this wasn't a quick work chat. His tie was loose. Her laugh had the kind of weight you only use when you're not just being polite. I took out my phone and snapped a photo. Not to send. Not yet. Just to keep. Proof. I walked out before they could look up, the picture burning a hole in my pocket. The next day, I went to work like nothing had happened. It was easier than I thought it would be. I'd had practice, after all, weeks of swallowing reactions at meetings, smiling through Tessa's little digs, letting Colin's late nights pass without comment. But under the surface, I was taking stock. Watching. Collecting. That's how I noticed the second half of their betrayal. Victor called me into his office for feedback on a client renewal. When he slid the file across his desk, I recognized it instantly. The numbers were wrong. Not wrong like a typo. Wrong like they'd been deliberately inflated to make the margins look better. "This isn't the model I built," I said. Victor didn't blink. Tessa said you'd signed off. I looked him straight in the eye. I didn't. He shifted in his chair. Well, it's done now, and the client's happy. Happy because they didn't know they were being set up for failure. I left his office and pulled the original numbers from my archived folder. Side by side with Tessa's updated version, it was obvious she was padding short-term gains to make herself look like a miracle worker. Long-term, it would tank the account. I saved the comparison in my records. Dated, labeled, bulletproof. By now, my what I can control list had turned into something else entirely. It wasn't just a coping mechanism anymore. It was a strategy. Step 1, get proof of the affair. Done. Step 2, get proof of the work sabotage. Done. Step 3, wait for the right moment to drop both. And it would have been simple, except for one thing. The surgery decision was still hanging over me like a bad ceiling tile. The neurosurgeon had called again. The tumor was stable, but the headaches were getting worse. If it's affecting your quality of life now, he said, surgery might be worth considering sooner rather than later. I told him I'd think about it. What I didn't tell him was that I didn't know if I could go under anesthesia with this much unfinished business. 2 weeks later, the opportunity fell into my lap. Whitfield's grand launch event. All the executives, clients, and media in one room. Tessa, of course, would be front and center. Colin had been invited as support. His company wanted a presence. I RSVP'd yes without hesitation. The week before the launch, I started my quiet preparations. I printed copies of the altered financials and my originals. I made a little packet with the Westview photo, a timestamp, and Colin's travel calendar, just in case anyone tried to spin it. I put them in a slim manila envelope and sealed it. The morning of the event, I stood in front of my closet longer than I should have. I didn't want to look like I was there for a fight. I wanted to look like I belonged in the room, no matter who was holding the mic. I settled on a deep green dress and my mother's gold bracelet, the one she wore to every important moment in my life. When I walked into the ballroom, the noise hit me like a wave. Laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of money moving. I saw Tessa by the stage, radiant and smug. I saw Colin by the bar, leaning too close to a colleague. I found Victor first, handed him the envelope like it was a menu. You might want to review this before you go on stage, I said. He opened his mouth to ask something, but I was already walking away. I didn't stay for the speeches. I slipped out the side door into the cool night air, my heels clicking against the pavement. My phone buzzed once. A text from Priya. Whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice, not just revenge. I stopped under a streetlight and looked at the ballroom windows glowing behind me. The envelope was in Victor's hands now. The fallout would come, but whether I'd be there to watch it, I hadn't decided yet. The Whitfield ballroom looked even brighter from outside, all glass and gold light. I could still hear the muffled clapping through the heavy doors, the rise and fall of Tessa's polished voice. I thought I'd want to be in the room for the reaction. To see Victor's face when he opened that envelope, to watch Tessa's composure crack. But standing in the cool night air, I realized my pulse had slowed for the first time in months. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number? Nice move, we should talk. Before I could type a reply, a second text. I'm outside. I turned, and there was Colin, leaning against a black town car. No tie, jacket open, looking like a man who just stepped out of someone else's evening. You gave Victor something, he said. Not a question. I did. His jaw tightened. Do you have any idea what this is going to do? To who? I asked. To all of us, he said. Tessa's worked for that spot. He stopped himself, but I already knew the end of that sentence. You've what? I asked. Worked for it? Slept for it? Lied for it? His face didn't change. That was the worst part. Not anger, not guilt, just calculation. I stepped closer, my voice low. You should know I didn't give him everything, just enough to remind him I'm not as easy to erase as you two thought. Colin shook his head like I was being dramatic. You could burn this all down, Lena. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just let you two stand under your own collapsing roof. Back inside, I slipped into the back of the room. Victor was at the podium, mid-sentence. His delivery was a little stiff now, his smile tighter. He caught my eye for half a second. Not gratitude, not anger, just awareness. Tessa spoke next, her confidence still intact, but I noticed the tiniest hitch when she read the teleprompter. Her eyes flicked toward Victor, then back to the crowd. The thing about knowing someone as well as I knew her, you can see when the mask slips, even if no one else does. After the applause, I moved toward the exit. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Victor. "We'll talk Monday," he said quietly, "about adjustments." "Sure," I said. He hesitated. "You could have gone straight to the board." "Why didn't you?" I smiled, not kindly, because some things are more valuable as leverage than as headlines. I walked out without looking for Colin or Tessa. I didn't need a scene. They'd have enough of their own in the weeks to come. The whispered questions, the strained meetings, the quiet erosion of trust. On the Uber ride home, Priya texted, "Well?" I typed back, "Didn't torch it, just loosen the screws." The following Monday, Victor reassigned 2 major accounts back to me for continuity. Tessa kept her title, but I could feel the edges of her authority fraying. Colin stopped mentioning late nights and started spending them at the gym, which I didn't believe for a second. But I also didn't ask, because here's the thing. I wasn't going to waste my recovery, whether from brain surgery or the long watch and wait, cleaning up after other people's messes. 2 weeks later, I scheduled the operation. Not because I wanted to hurry, but because I wanted it done before anyone else could decide my timeline for me. The morning of the surgery, I left my phone with Priya. "Don't give my number to anyone unless it's blood or DNA," I said. She laughed, but she knew I meant it. When they wheeled me into the OR, I wasn't thinking about Tessa or Colin or Victor. I was thinking about the gold bracelet on my wrist, my mother's voice telling me to balance on the balls of my feet so you can move in any direction, and the strange relief of knowing that, for once, I'd chosen my fight. It's been 5 months, the tumor's gone, recovery was slower than I liked, but I'm back at work. Not the same role, not the same rules. Tessa still smiles too wide. Colin still tries to make small talk. And me, I still have the envelope, the full one, tucked in my desk at home. Not to use. Not yet. Sometimes you don't have to set the fire. You just have to stop holding up the ceiling. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?